We are taking a break from our top 25 Carolina Hurricanes all-time list to bring back the first Wolves Wednesday podcast of the season. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about the Western Conference champions last year, what the offseason has been like, and looking ahead for the 26-27 of the Chicago Wolves here on a Wednesday Wolves edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, or Locked On Wolves, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Zach Martin, and on today's show, I am excited to have a friend of the program, one of the coaches of your back-to-back Challenger Series champions, the Greek national hockey team, and the head coach of your Western Conference champions, your Chicago Wolves, Spiros Anastas. Brother, welcome back onto the podcast again. It's feeling good talking to you. I know the last time we talked was the right before the Texas Star Series, but how you been? How's your summer been?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back and leading with the Greek team over the Wolves. I like that. That caught me by surprise. But summer's been short, but we made the best of it with the family. Couple of vacations, enjoying the sun, enjoying some fishing. Wife and I went to Mexico, so we did all we could in the short amount of time, and excited to get right back to hockey. But anytime you have success, both the Canes and the Wolves, summer might be a little bit shorter, but we'll take that. I'll take another short summer next year if we have to.
Oh, you know what? I mean, yeah, you'll gladly take a short summer just because of what's at the end of that road to hopefully get some hardware. But yeah, I don't blame you one bit. And yeah, hopefully next year, knock on wood, I'll have you on again. We'll be talking some Calder Cup celebrations. But yeah, for you, I know, it was a wild season for you guys last year. You had, an interesting start to the year. You become the interim head coach. You eventually get the interim tag finally taken off, which I talked about for a while before it was official. So great that it worked out for you. And then, with just the playoff run, like for you, I know we talked about like right before the Texas Star Series. I know the one thing you brought up was the fact that, during the regular season, the team was hurt. You didn't have all your guys. The regular season record wasn't great, but we always know, throw that out the window. It's playoffs. It doesn't matter at that point. And your boys took care of business, took care of the Texas Stars, beat the Grand Rapids Griffins, who went 29-1-1-1 to start the year. And then you took care of the Colorado Eagles in the Western Conference Final. And lo and behold, you and the guys are in the Calder Cup final. What was that run like for you to go through that, become Western Conference champions of the American Hockey League, and then have a shot for a Calder along the same time the Hurricanes were in it for a Stanley Cup final that year?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal, the whole experience, like the whole organization going through that together. There was never an off night because you'd be playing and then, the next night you'd be watching the Canes, on that same kind of journey. And some games it would be, the Canes are also playing on the same night we were. So it's just a lot of buzz and intensity around our locker room. And obviously we're really connected with the Canes, especially our captain is, Josiah Slavin, and he's, watching Jacob. And so it was just great because it was just like hockey in your veins, through that 2-month run. In terms of the team specifically, it was just really inspirational to see a team that, face some adversity through the year, from, coaching change to adjusting our style a little bit and our approach on a day-to-day basis, to having a lot of success, with 3 All-Stars, 4 NHL debuts. I think we had 11 guys play NHL games for the Canes last year. I think when I made the final count, we were at 75-man games played for the Canes last year. That's a great impact and a great contribution. But then we hit March and we have an abysmal March as the Wolves, right? So a 14-point lead on second place turned into a 4-point lead. But I think in a way that was positive for us. And we had to hold on to the end of the year and have a real great finish. And that momentum just carried on to the playoff run. But being the underdog in every single series, especially, we were only the higher seed for the first series and the last series. But I felt like we were underdogs for both of those as well, because we had against Texas, coming into the playoffs, and we were a much younger, less experienced team against the Marlies coming into the final. So identity that just pushed us and kept bringing us to success and just, exceeding expectations. But it was phenomenal. It brought me even closer to the guys that I could have ever dreamed of. and brought them closer. So that's what makes me even more excited for the core that's returning for this year.
Yeah, no, it's definitely exciting. And that's why I want to ask you too, because it seems like whenever you look on social media or when you talk to, because when I talk to a lot of people around the Wolves and stuff like that, it's just, you see you like at the glass, just banging on the glass with the whistle and stuff like that. And just the, you get, Eric Tulsky and everyone from the Hurricanes, giving you a lot of praise and the team praise as well. What's that like for you, just seeing that connection between you and the guys kind of blossom, and the fact that it's like everyone is noticing it, not just in Chicago, but in Raleigh as well?
Yeah, I mean, I give full credit to the players in our leadership group in the room before I give it to us as coaches. But we have a great coaching team, and it was just a real all hands on deck approach. Everybody from our equipment staff to our athletic training, strength and conditioning staff to our coaching staff, right through the locker room, like we were all in it together. We were pulling on the rope together, and you really felt that. And we were having fun. That clip of me banging on the glass, blowing the whistle, it's actually me yelling at Ivan Ryabkin to get off the ice because we were so big. We were so big on workload management, especially in a tough playoff run. And guys like Ivan, guys like Bradley, Justin Robidas, like they want to stay on the ice. They want to shoot more pucks, but that increases their workload. And it became a joke. I leave the ice. I tell them they got 10 minutes and they try to stretch it to 12-15, and I'd come out banging and blowing the whistle. So, but those are the little moments that you just bring you closer together. You become a family. And, for people to recognize that, it's really cool because nobody, whether it's Eric Tulsky or Darren York or Rod Brindamore, when we had all the call-ups up with the Canes, given our coaching staff and our program here kudos, it was never really so much about, oh, they're really good with the X's and O's and they're really good with the tactical stuff. It was all about just like our preparation, our camaraderie, our desire to win, our desire to, continue to play for each other. And yeah, the X's and O's and tactical are very important without a doubt, but that's the kind of special sauce, the stuff that we got kudos for, that really, makes you go on a inspiring run. So it was something I was proud of to hear that's what we were getting kudos for, just the connection and the communication that my staff and I had with these players on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because I remember the first time I had you on the podcast, you were still the defensive coach for the Wolves at the time. I know we talked a lot about, like Ronan Seeley and a bunch of all these other guys, Charles Alexis Legault and, Joel Nystrom. Nystrom just gets a contract extension this past season. Legault is looking like someone who could do something with the Wolves, with you guys this year and hopefully in the future for the Canes, and Ronan Seeley's back. I know we'll talk more about offseason stuff, but you could definitely see just the preparation that you had with those guys and now you do with the full team. And like you said, you had a lot of guys up there. You had Nystrom up there for over 30, almost 41 games with the Hurricanes, just because, and he kind of just fit in right away. And then you look at the forwards, you get Bradley and Nadeau come up and produce in 12 games over time. And then you have all these other guys making their time up there as well. You're seeing some debuts for a lot of guys that you were happy to see. But there's one guy I have to ask you about, because you look from his first season to this past year, and you saw a huge jump in his game. Felix Unger-Sorum, what was it like just seeing him go from being, first year in North America, learning the style, the play, and just being on the ice here, to now year two? And you're talking about a guy who led your team in points with 66 and in 49 assists, which is just absolutely amazing to see that growth. What was that like for you, watching him just blossom into this guy year two in North America, essentially?
Yeah, so it's interesting because everyone will always ask that same question and ask about, like, what was it like to see the change on the ice? But the change was really evident for us the first day he walked through the door. You just looked at him, and you looked at his body, and you looked at his jawline, and you looked at his approach and the confidence that he walked through the door with. That was so much different. So he got the confidence and the familiarity of playing in the American League through his 19-year-old season. Now, as a 20-year-old, he was almost walking in like a man. Plus, he just had a full summer of knowing how to do things right. Like, he learned how to eat properly. He learned better habits. He learned the things that he had to dial in on, and he just got bigger and stronger and more explosive. And that was the ultimate difference. So we noticed that before we even saw him on the ice, and that got us really excited. But he was more talkative, more of a presence in the room. He was our only Ironman this year. He played 72 games for us, plus an NHL game. So he played 73 regular season games. And unfortunately, his first time missed, an injury came midway through the Western Conference final. that leaked into the they called it Cup final. But it was really special to see that because it was a point of concern in year one. But that's, when you have a great strength and conditioning staff, when you have a great medical staff, when you have great communication from management and the coaching staff, and you lay expectations out clearly and concisely, and to see that growth in an individual off the ice, it just goes to show that development is just bigger than just, little drills and little, skating or stick handling stuff, because that was the ultimate difference in Felix. He wasn't eating Taco Bell anymore. He got obsessed with it. And I don't want to expose him here on a podcast, but he was eating Taco Bell. He didn't cook for himself. Kristen, our nutritionist in Carolina, she dials in with these young guys. That's what development camp's for. That's what the rookie camp is for, and training camp. She helps educate them. She also educates our strength and conditioning coaches. And then you got Bill Burniston.
Oh, yeah.
Is the best in the NHL. And then we have Jack Rinzel that, executes Bill's program and his methods, and he, puts his own wrinkles into it. It just takes a village. As much as I hate that term. I hate when people overuse it. Yeah. But then you see Felix Ungerstorm come in now, and now he's eating cleanly. He's getting the right kind of sleep. He's not playing video games till 2 a.m. He's not eating Taco Bell. He's a little bit more attentive in meetings, because his eyes as a 19-year-old are just kind of going all around the room, just like all of us did our first year of college or whatever it was. So the biggest growth in Felix was off the ice. And then everything we knew that he would be, especially people who drafted him, like Darren York and Eric Tulsky, then that showed, because, the frame was filled out. So, and here's the crazy thing. He was 20 years old last year. So yeah, he's 21 walking through the doors this year. So I might be sitting there just waiting to see his arrival, right? Because now he's a year smarter, year more comfortable, year more confident. He's had the success. In my opinion, he got snubbed in All-Star selection. He got snubbed in first team and second team All-Star.
100%.
Give me a break. So hopefully he's got a little chip on his shoulder as well.
Yeah, hey, it sounds like every time someone gets snubbed in Raleigh, how come this guy, and this guy didn't get all these prizes? So yeah, it's just that gradual trickle down of all right, no respect here. Hey, welcome to the organization. Gonna get a little chippy for sure, but yeah, it's great to see what he did, and of course, with how Justin Robitaille played, and Bradley Nadeau for you guys, even with him going to Raleigh, comes back and stuff like that, and of course, defense, goaltending, all that stuff. You guys had an insane run. It was great to see. And I know you're definitely excited for this upcoming season, which we will talk about in segment 3, guys. So you have to stick around for that part. But that being said, the offseason for the Wolves, while it's been quiet for the Hurricanes, the Wolves have been making some decent moves to bring a lot of the guys back and then some. So stick around. We'll talk about the offseason for the Chicago Wolves so far here on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes /Wolves. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything working in one place. Odoo is one platform to manage, grow, and scale your business. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward that same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. One thing that really stands out is how the organization got everyone pulling in the same direction with just the guys that they brought in who want to be here. And that's, if you're talking the Carolina Hurricanes or the Chicago Wolves, they want to get the guys to fit the system to make themselves better. It wasn't just about one great player or coach. It's about the coordinated effort across the entire organization that made it successful. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes /Wolves on a Wednesday edition of the show. So we talked about the Western Conference and the whole process that led up to that. And now let's move over to the offseason. And Spiro, I know for you, I know we've kind of talked here and there, and there's a lot of, wondering what's going on with the roster, how things are going to shape up. But recently, some great news, I know for you guys, especially for your leadership, Corey. Not only did you get Ronan Seeley back, which I've always been praising Ronan Seeley. I've loved his game for the last few years, but you also get Josiah Slavin, your captain, back for 2 years on a one-way AHL deal, which, hey, nothing wrong with that. You got the captain back. That's what matters. And you got Ronan Seeley back. What is it for you seeing not just one, but both of your leadership group coming back for at least this season at the smallest, hopefully longer, especially for Ronan?
Yeah, it's exciting because they were such a big part of our identity and our culture in the room. Having one guy being a forward, one guy being a defenseman. Obviously, Justin Robidoux was part of that leadership group that wore letters, but we have a number of other leaders throughout the organization as well. Like Caden Primo was part of our leadership group. Yuso Valimaki was part of our leadership group last year. The more leaders that can organically become part of that pulse of the room, the better. But it was kind of the catalyst of that were Josiah Slavin and Ronan Seeley. So having those guys back is paramount for our success moving forward because they know what it means to be part of our culture. They know what it means to play Wolves hockey, Carolina-style hockey. They know everything that went into the success we had last year. And they also probably felt the sting of falling short in our ultimate goal more than anybody, probably even more than me. So I think that combination is going to make them real great leaders for us this year. And it's been great to see their development as leaders, how more outspoken they've been, how, the little methods they use on the ice, whether it's with officials or opponents, they've really grown into that role. And it's exciting for us because without them, there's a lot that is left unsaid in the locker room. So to have those guys that could be a voice and be there for their teammates, it's the first step for us to try and run it back to get to the final again.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's the one thing that's always interesting when you talk about like the Hurricanes and you have, Jacob Slavin, you got Jordan Martinook, Sebastian Aho, Jordan Stahl, and even some of the other guys like a Shane Gostisbehere or Sean Walker, just guys who don't have the A's or the C's, but can find a way to be a leader on the team. And I think, for the Wolves, like you said, you got Ronan, you got Josiah, Primo, all these other guys that you've talked about. And I think that's something that's very huge because, you could have 1 or 2 or 3 guys, but it could be, some veterans. It's just that's interesting, too, when you look at the American Hockey League. And I know you know this for sure 100%, obviously. It's the fact that it's an interesting mix. Like, how do you kind of mix in with the roles of you're going to have certain number of veterans or certain guys up to this age? Like, what's that like for you having these guys come back, but still kind of find a balance of your leadership with a roster that is still the youngest in the league, but still find a way to have guys to step up and, be a link between you as a coaching staff and the players overall. And there's everything that's on and off the ice.
Yeah, so it's unique for us because, we think of our veterans, but we don't have a guy that's over like 28 years old. And we don't have like those hired gun American League guys that have like played a bunch of NHL games or played in the American League for 12 years. Like, I always think back to, I think it was after Game 3, there was a little bit of a brawl that broke out between the Marlies and us after we just lost that game in Game 3. And every single guy on the ice, except for their goaltender for the Marlies, was 30 plus. And they were beating on, I'm not saying that we were getting beat, but they were taking swings on Bradley Nadeau, Felix Ungersorm, like a bunch of guys who were not even 24 yet, Justin Robidoux. So it's just like, we don't have that. So that is a unique opportunity for development and growth for the guys that we do have. We're very prospect oriented. We're very young. We don't have the highest AHL salary budget. But that puts guys on the fast track on their leadership careers. Josiah Slavin has to be one of the older guys, has to be one of the more present guys in the locker room. When we named Ronan Seeley an assistant captain in 24-25, it was only really it was his 3rd year pro, but only his real 2nd year as an American leaguer under the Canes umbrella, because there was that gap year where he's played a little bit in the ECHL and he played for independent Chicago Wolves. So it's like we were really fast tracking guys, including Justin Robidoux. Last year he became an A. It was only his 2nd year in the American League. So it's unique in that sense, but at the same time, we don't have a lot of egos because of it too. Sometimes it's great to have that thought like, oh, it'd be great to have a veteran here, a guy who's played 500 games. But that's a whole different can of worms. I'm not saying they're all like that, but then you have to kind of cater to them. Where we, as an organization, our philosophy is we got to cater to our prospects because we want to make them NHL players. So that means fast tracking some guys through leadership roles, guys like Ronan Seeley, Justin Robidoux, and even Josiah Slavin. Yeah, he's one of our older guys in our room, but he's not the typical veteran captain that you see in the American League. So it's great because even the leadership group is a development process in our environment. And when we want to be all about development, what better way to even develop leaders? So yeah, I'm kind of talking about a lot of different angles, but everything we're about is development, right? So we don't have the guy that just comes in, he's an automatic C because he played 300 NHL games, 400 AHL games, and he's just going to be the old dog that can probably teach the coaches some things. We have a guy that we have to help become a better captain, and each year he's been phenomenal. So I can't wait to see Josiah Slavin now in year 3. And that's our environment. So to answer your question, that's what's exciting about it, just to see the constant growth and the constant uptick in everything we do.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's something that I really enjoyed of what is just, keeping up with you guys and what you guys have been doing overall just as a staff, as a team. Because, yeah, it's, like I said, we talked about it. It's just, youngest team is prospects heavy oriented type of stuff. This isn't like your typical, like you said, your typical Marlies. We got a bunch of guys who could be, as in baseball terms, the 4A guy, where they're too good for the minors, but it's just, the NHL maybe is not their, their top league is not their thing, or, it's just difficult up there. So yeah, you're going strictly young guys across the board. Like I said, when you have no one above 24, essentially 28, that's a crazy thing to think about when you're looking at it, because you're not used to that for an AHL roster. But yeah, and like I said, when you get, Josiah Slavin back, you get Ronan Seeley back, and now you add in Zach Sawchenko into your, goalie rotation of, Ruslan Kasayev. You also got Keen Primo. I know it's not official. I know they're still working on it behind the scenes, but for you, what does that say to when they're like, okay, we know we got a really good guy in Primo. We got, Ruslan, who's still, like 21, I think it's like 21 or 22. Like he's still even a young guy as well. But you bring in Sawchenko, who has played for the Wolves before, has been around the block in the AHL. What's it like having another guy like that, being in a goalie room with, those two guys?
Yeah, it's great because he's got a voice. He can be part of our leadership as well with what he brings on a day-to-day basis. He's a relentless worker. He had a really great year in Cleveland last year. Like he took over that starting job from Fedotov there. Mm-hmm. And, he was really one shot away from defeating the eventual Calder Cup champions. They lost in Game 5 and in OT, and it was a weird goal against that went in. But that seemed to be how the Marlies always won. So that's for a different podcast. But, so he brings that experience. What I love about Zach Sawchenko is, and I coached against him in the Canadian University loop when he was at the University of Alberta. He's a guy that simply has just earned it. He's earned it. Like he represented Team Canada at the World Juniors being undrafted. That's nearly unheard of. He had to go the Canadian University route. He left juniors a year early. He didn't play a 20-year-old year in the WHL. He went straight to the University of Alberta. He gets a contract out of there. He had to grind through the ECHL, grind through the AHL, managed to get NHL games under his belt. Like this is a guy that's earned it in everything he does. So anytime you can add earners into your room, that's just going to make everyone else better. Like that's a guy you want to play with. That's a guy you want to play for. And he's going to hold guys accountable because he's never had anything handed to him. So he's not going to accept an entitled defenseman playing in front of him or a centerman in low coverage. And I love guys like that. So I'm super excited to add him to the mix. And you're spot on. Like that just makes our leadership group and just our vibe in the room that much better.
Yeah. Like you said, the fact that you get a guy like that who's earned it, had to go through the processes. Yeah, because you could definitely tell the guys who had to grind, because there's a bunch of guys that we've seen all around the, the ECHL, American, the NHL, guys who've had to start lower and move their way up and try to fight for everything they've done. So, yeah, I mean, even look at Brandon Bussey, like never saw time with the Boston Bruins organization, comes to the Canes as a waiver pickup, goes and wins 31 games, goes and wins the Stanley Cup. And now, like you said, now you had Zach Sawchenko, who's been there and done that and is now another tool in the tool belt to be like, all right, here's another leadership guy. Let's see what, he can help, that group as well and all that. So yeah, it's definitely exciting for sure. But we talk about the offseason, but now let's start looking forward to the 26-27 season for the Chicago Wolves. So guys, make sure to stick around for segment 3 of the podcast here on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Support for today's episode comes from Indeed sponsored jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed sponsored jobs helps connect the employers with candidates who match specific needs, this like skills, certifications, and locations. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. And in the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed according to Indeed data worldwide. And usually the biggest difference isn't someone doing more work. It's having somebody who knows exactly what needs to happen and helps everything run smoother. So spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates to check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. We need the right person to cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked on Hurricanes /Wolves on a Wednesday edition of Locked on Hurricanes. So we talked about the Wolves going through their, great playoff run, become the Western Conference champions. Hopefully, go for Calder Cup next year, knock on wood. Talk about the offseason so far, but now let's actually look ahead to the 26-27 season. And I know, Spiro, where there's still a lot of other contracts that need to get figured out. I know there's a lot of RFAs still dealing with all that stuff behind the scenes. But for you, where you're at right now, what are you kind of, it's going to be your first full season as the head coach of the Wolves. You're coming off the Western Conference final championship. You're in the Calder Cup. And I know you guys, and I've said this before, you guys got that taste of like what it's like to go for a trophy. And I know you guys want to get back there. What are for you, we know what the end goal, what you're hoping for, but like every marathon has to start at the starting line. And what's your kind of feelings going into the season as of right now? Just hoping to, learn and progress and get back to where you guys want to be, next summer.
Yeah. Well, I think we should be able to hit the ground running just because of how much longer we played than everyone else in our division. Right. And the bulk of our games through October and November are division games. So, we know the standard that we've set now. And that's what, we talked about previously about some of those leaders coming back and some of that core coming back. We have to identify that we are losing some key pieces. We've lost Ryan Suzuki, Dominic Fensori, Noel Gunler, Cal Foot's not returning. So there's some guys that aren't coming back, but as a whole, as a core, like there's some real key guys that are returning, and we've added some great pieces that have actually made us a little bit bigger. You talk about Gabriel Seeger and Chase Wheatcroft and Steven Sardarian, was the
great pickup
forward of the year of the CCHA from Michigan Tech. Like these are all guys that are 6'2" plus, a little bit heavier. So we might look a little bit bigger, this year. So while we've made some losses, we're expecting some guys to fill those holes. Like our top 6 centermen were Suzuki and Philp, and we didn't have Philp for the majority of the season. So Suzuki is the big loss there. That's 48 points. We don't necessarily need one guy to fill those 48 points, but what an opportunity for Charlie Serrato and Ivan Ryabkin. They're going to get top 6 center minutes. And if they each have, 30 to 40 or 25 to 35 points as essentially rookies. I know Ivan doesn't qualify as a rookie because how many games he ended up playing, but this is his first full year in the American League. Then now you're not only just supplementing those lost points and goals, you're actually surpassing them. So, we think that while, big names like Ryan Suzuki and Dominic Fensori at face value, like, oh, those are big losses. But we can make up for those losses with the pieces that we've added, and if we do it by committee. And that's exciting because it fits our brand. All last year, we were a by committee team. Yes, Bradley Nadeau is a star in our league. Felix Unger-Sorum led us in points, and you have guys that need to shine on certain nights. But we were a by committee team, and that's why we kept winning when all those guys were called up. That's why we kept winning when guys were injured. We found ways by committee. So I'm really excited because of that. We've had some great add-ons, and we're having the core back, and that's how we're going to get our season started. Hopefully we hit the ground running because of that. everybody's a year older, a year more mature. We talked about Felix Ungerstorm, Justin Robidas, Bradley Nadeau, if he ends up with us. There's two sides to the scale. There's a roster that if we had absolutely everybody. So that means everybody's healthy in Carolina, everybody's healthy with us. There's no waiver claims. There's no trades, so you can get really excited for what it potentially could be. But at the same time, do I want to see Bradley Nadeau here? I don't know. I want the best for him. Selfishly, if I answered that selfishly, it'd be like, yes, I'd love one of the best shooters in the American League, if not the best. But he might have an opportunity here. Obviously we all know Seth Jarvis will miss some time. So I would love nothing more as a coach in this role in the American League. I'd love nothing more than for Bradley Nadeau to have a great start in Carolina and for him to make it very difficult for them to ever send him back down to us again. Now, does that mean the Wolves are a little bit worse? Probably. But what it means is that we've actually done the real job we're here to do. So there's so many things to be excited about to start the season. And I think we're going to be in a really great spot mentally because I think some guys in the right way will lean into the sting of losing that Calder Cup final. And that'll push us through the marathon and then into the second season, which is the Calder Cup playoffs. And that's just the standard. That's not, that's non-negotiable for us. Like, that's where we got to be. We got to get to the dance. So it's with that sight in mind, and then we take it one step at a time.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like I said, that's the crazy thing when you look at it too. Is it's just the checks and balances are just trying to figure out rosters. To what you said with the national, with the American. Like, there's so many things that kind of just move around. Like you said too. Like, yeah, you would love to have every guy here, but we all know everyone wants to go to the NHL at some point too. So yeah, it's definitely makes it interesting for sure. And I know, like you said, you mentioned Charlie Serrato. Played a handful of games last year. How excited are for you just to see what he can do on this stage after what he's done at Penn State and just kind of seeing that little glimpses this past year, and now you get a full season with him on the roster.
Yeah, I'm super excited for him. He's very talented. He's got great vision. I don't want to make any promises. I definitely don't want to speak for him, but he's the kind of guy that in his first year, we talked about not needing one guy to supplement the loss in Suzuki's production, but he's the type of guy that could do it just himself. Like, he's got that skill set. Now, there's a lot of factors that need to fall in line, but he skates well. He's a hard worker, plays, he doesn't shy away from physical play. Because of that, he actually spent a lot of the year last year a little bit injured, right? So by the time he came to us, he still wasn't fully on the mend yet. So I'm excited to see a healthy Charlie Serrato, right? So he's a guy that can have just, catch this league by storm in his first year. And then, the other guy, like I mentioned already, is Ivan Ryabkin. Like, I love the way he plays. He's physical. He's tough. He's great in front of the net. He can make plays. He's got a great shot. He just gets under everybody's skin, everybody. And you need guys like that in this league because you're playing some teams anywhere from 8 to 12 times in a season. So he's a problem for a lot of our opponents, and I'm excited to see him with another year of confidence. So it's just, that's what we're about. That's our organizational philosophy. These guys are our priority, and if we develop them right, they'll help us win now. And that's what we're planning on doing.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm excited to see what you guys can do, but I want to ask you specifically. I know, last year was, like I said, an interesting year, not just for the team, but for you as well. You're going to your first full season as head coach of the Wolves. What are you looking forward to, or like, what are your expectations, or what are you kind of just overall hoping for, or like your feelings of just going into this year? I know it's all about the players and developing them, but like for you specifically, what are you kind of looking at for this season, just for you as a coach, going through all the stuff that you've done as being an assistant, leading national teams, the assistant coach on this team to interim to now, the head bench boss on this roster going into this year?
Yeah, so I'm excited to, learn from last year. It's my first opportunity as a head coach in this league to look back at last year and like really lean into the positives and the strengths that we accomplished, but also to make some tweaks and adjustments. It was kind of trial by fire last year. You had to kind of jump right into it. I'm the kind of personality that, when we took over December 12th, I thought it wasn't a good idea to just change a bunch of stuff. Like we had to change our style and the things that we valued in our messaging, but I didn't want to just like start coming up with like slogans or
Right.
completely change our identity. It was just incremental little adjustments, that reached to the playoff push. But now I can start a whole season fresh. I could have, my own mantra, my own slogan, my own, touch on what's in our locker room and in the visuals that the guys see. And that stuff all matters because it all helps in our messaging on a day-to-day basis. So I'm excited for that. But that doesn't come just directly from me. Like that's, I sit down and I talk to Dan Price, and we've hired a new video coach. We've hired a new assistant coach. They haven't been officially announced yet, so I can't really give their names at the moment.
I'm good. Totally understand.
But they're great people that are going to be part of that cumulative process to come up with those, identities or those, motivation factors. So it's really great for me to be able to do that from scratch, where last year I had to like slowly,
Right.
get the guys leaning towards the direction we wanted them to, because, I think the change was positive, but whether it's a positive change or not, it's always hard to go through a change. And I think where a lot of people in my position last year fail off the bat is they try and change everything right away, from things that are on the walls to the way they do the scheduling to all that, where we went the route when Dan and I had talked about it. We went the route of just like, let's slowly make incremental changes. And then by the time we are into that push, it's going to be our team. So now we have that standard and we can start this year, completely fresh and make our mark right from day one. So that's what I'm most excited about. But it's hard for me to say like personally, like what I'm looking forward to. I'm just looking forward to continue getting better, just learning more, being better for the guys, making new relationships, and then, reestablishing or building on the relationships I already have with the guys that are returning. That's why I do it. So, I can't get ahead of myself thinking about just wins and losses or anything like that.
Oh yeah.
So as simple as it is just, it's development in all facets, development of relationships, development of the guys, leadership, communication, and our coaching staff is in consistent development as well. So that's what gets me going, every year. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see what you can do for your first full season. I know we've talked a lot over the last, year or two, the last few months and stuff like that. So I'm definitely excited to see what you guys can do this year. And I want to ask you though, real quick, do you take anything that you've learned with, the Greek hockey team and kind of what you guys have done over the last couple of years? Like, do you translate any of that to what you do now with the Wolves, or is it kind of just like, this is one thing and this is a different thing? Or is there like kind of like you kind of mesh essentially like how you do things with what you do?
I pull on every experience I've had throughout my entire career. Like I'm going into year 18 doing this, and I've coached, whether it's Greeks or the Chinese, Division III college, Division I college, Canadian university, like every single experience has refined me, built me, broken me down, stomped me to the ground. It's not always positive, but it's negatives too. But it's made me who I am today, and I'm continuously learning and reaching back to those experiences to help me in today's job, where my feet are right now. The biggest thing I take from my international experiences is how everyone communicates differently. Sometimes as literal as they don't speak the same language as you. I mean, that's something we face a lot being the Carolina Hurricanes affiliate, because we have Russians, Czechs, Swedes, Finns. There are guys that aren't hearing the same words as the guy next to them, even though it's the person who's delivering it is not saying anything different. So that's what I really pull on a lot, is communicating a little bit more closely, checking that they're hearing and receiving the message, simplifying our message, understanding individuals and that they learn differently. Some guys are audio, some guys are visual, some guys have different upbringings. Some guys really value family and speaking about it. Some guys are a little bit standoffish, that this needs to be more of a professional relationship than a personal one. So yeah, I pull on everything. The Greeks have no budget. The Chinese had an unlimited budget. So, you can look at your roster like that. When we're full, we talked about that ideal scenario where everyone's healthy, everyone clears waivers, we have everybody. It's like unlimited budget with the decisions we can make in our locker room, in our lineup. But, 3 guys are called up to the Canes and 2 guys are injured. Now our budget in our lineup is a little bit lower. So we got to squeeze the best of everything we have. So, that's kind of relating that experience, the Greek experience, to us playing shorthanded. Everything matters in this game. You're never too big for an opportunity or an experience, because it will be a beneficial tool for you no matter where you are. And I hope the day that it comes that I coach in the NHL, I'll still be pulling from those experiences as well. So, I can't give you one complete clear answer, because I am a believer.
No, it's perfect. Yeah.
That every experience matters. And if you use it the right way, whether it's a tough experience or one that's easy, or one that's, ends in happiness, it can make you better today where you are. So that's kind of how we do it as a coaching staff in our room.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I like when you, like you said, you're not just pulling from one; it's just pulling in a bunch of different things, and then you get to where you're at now, and it's like, and I've always been told, it's like you can never stop learning. There's always something you can take every day and just learn on something and keep building towards that. So one last question before I let you go, and like I said, I do appreciate you taking the time, just jumping on here and talking. But I know last year, we were talking during the playoffs, and then you said it like throughout from December to when you guys got, when you had to fight for that second spot in the Central Division, is this year. And I think fans would love to hear this too. Are you going to take the same approach are you going to keep breaking the thing, like games off into certain chunks, or how are you kind of visualizing? Because like I said, we talked about it, it's a marathon, and I know you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, but are you guys kind of, I don't know if you are, or if you're able to talk about, like, is this going to be another instance where you're just kind of breaking sections of the season off and like, okay, this is where we hope to be by this time, and this time, and just kind of continuing that?
Yeah, no doubt. I think I've used segments a lot in my career, and it's really a great way to break up the season. So, you have those 8-game segments, and you have a minimum goal that you can hit. And once you hit that, you know that if you continuously hit that goal or you average out, you're going to make the playoffs. And that's our standard, right? That's our bottom line. But anytime you get into the positives, we have some incentives, an extra day off, or a meal that we can provide, or something like that. It gets the guys excited, especially when the season starts to feel a little bit mundane and the dog days of the season. You're just like, yeah, I feel like I've done this on repeat, because we have, right? But every time there can be a little bit of segment goal, it gets the guys excited. And then it also provides an end, right? So when there's an end to a segment, it keeps you from getting too high and too low. It could be a segment that you finish -3, which I think we only finished minus in 2 segments last year out of the 9 that we had. But it ends. Okay, we were minus on this one, but if we go +4, if we were -1 on the last one, we go +4 in the next one, then we're +3 in the last 2. So it just helps you kind of cope and recover from negatives, and also just kind of get back to ground level off of like a really high segment. You can finish, you can get 14 out of 16 points on a segment, and you're really excited because our segment goal was, 9 or whatever the math I had. I got to go back and read my files. But now it's like, it's a new segment. We're at 0 guys. So we can't be this high now, right? Because we got to now do the job for this segment. So I think it's a really great way to regulate and neutralize your locker room. And those are the teams that find success, the ones that are always kind of steady on the rudder. So, yeah, without a doubt, we're going to use that same methodology this year. We might add some tweaks and wrinkles or change the segments up a little bit. I need to kind of still talk to the staff about that. But it was a real great way for us to piece together. And like I mentioned in the previous question, every experience matters. So when we went through that March, which was the 2 segments that we finished negative in because we had an abysmal month, we only won 3 games that whole month. I think we played 14 games, right? So we only won 3 games. We had a bunch of OT losses. So we collected points, but we only had 3 wins. So only 3 games, we got to 2 points. We leaned on that because that experience made the fight for second place a lot closer than it needed to be. It made the gap 14 points to like 3 or 4 points, but then we had to fight. So then when you're in a game 5 against Texas, you say, well, that's what we were fighting for. So we had to go through that pain of the gap being tight, but we fought through it and we got the job done. And now game 5's at home against Texas, and we're going to go out there and we're going to kick, the bleep out of them. And we did. Right? You look back to your segments then and say that was hard, but we had to go through that hard to have the next 2 great ones because that helped us secure, second place, and now we're in game 5 of the first round, and we got to get the job done because we went through all that to earn this. And it's just different ways to motivate your guys. So yeah, without a doubt, the segments are a big piece of us and keeps the coaches sane as well. So
yeah, we definitely need to keep you guys sane and kind of be like, all right, we're not going to go crazy, and stuff like that. So,
exactly.
Totally. Yeah, I know it's a long season, especially when you're talking like three games in 3 days, and it's 3 different teams too. I know the AHL schedule is absolutely wild, and now you guys get new opponents this year. I think it's like first time in history for some teams. Some you haven't seen in a while, so I know it's going to be a fun season for you guys. But Spiro, I really appreciate you always coming on here and taking the time talking about the Wolves. Get to know you a little bit more, and hopefully the fans enjoy these, because I know it's always fun to talk Chicago Wolves, because it's fun to talk about the Hurricanes, but it's also fun to also talk about the Wolves, because where are you gonna get your future Hurricanes if you're not gonna get them from your current Wolves? So it's always good to have these episodes. But before I let you go, where can people find you on, and obviously where to find the Wolves and all that good stuff? The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, well, I'm on all the socials. I do a lot more retweeting and sharing the Wolves posts or Canes posts, but I'm out there. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I don't put a lot of personal opinion out there, so probably the best bet for me. But if anyone wants to see what I'm following or sharing, I'm there. Obviously, the Wolves are on Flow Hockey, so it's a real reasonable price. It's great hockey to watch. But the next step for us as a staff here is we're going to be coaching the Carolina Hurricanes rookies and prospects at rookie tournament. It's only 2 games this year rather than 3 because Florida dropped out, so it's only a game against Tampa rookies and Nashville rookies. But I encourage the Canes fans, watch it because there's
100%.
There's storylines. I've been involved in 2 years. We had a guy that we never even saw in Chicago, Jackson Blake, played my first year, and pretty big impact player, I think, for the
just a little bit.
the Stanley Cup champions. But then the other storylines, you look at Bradley Nadeau and Felix Unger-Sorm and Justin Robidoux, and guys that have grown out of that rookie tournament. So yeah, watch it. It's really exciting, and it gives you your first look at your future Canes. And the good news this year is it's in Raleigh. It's at the Invisalign. So come out and see it in person, even better, right? So and it gives our rookies that first experience, so to feel the love from the Canes fans and the Canes community. They may not be there for a couple of years, but it's our opportunity to give them a first impression as well. So I'll leave it at that. That's our opportunity to give those young guys a good experience in the next few weeks.
Yep, guys, make sure to meet you out there in Morrisville for Invisalign Arena for that. Of course, Florida would drop out, but that's a different conversation for another time. But yeah, no, it's definitely exciting for sure. But yeah, guys, make sure to keep up with Spiro and the Wolves this year. I guess on Flow Hockey, price is not too bad at all, and be able to watch your Wolves and see what the guys are doing down there. But Spiro, like I said, thank you so much for taking your time. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Big thank you to Spiro for coming on to talk about the Chicago Wolves, and I'm excited for the season, guys. So make sure to go check out Flow Hockey and make sure to watch the Chicago Wolves, because you never know, you might see some future Hurricanes on this roster. But I hope everyone enjoyed this first edition of Wolves Wednesday for the 26-27 season. Hopefully we'll have more, throughout the season. The goal, knock on wood, is to have 1 episode of Wolves Wednesday a month. So hopefully everything works out. Make sure to check out for those. As I said, I hope everyone enjoyed this episode of Spirits. It's always great talking to him and just picking his brain on everything from the Wolves and his coaching style and just the team overall. Should be a very exciting year for your defending Western Conference champion Chicago Wolves, and hopefully next summer we're talking Calder Cup champs. But gotta go through the season first, and then of course the playoffs. But until then, this will be the Wolves Wednesday edition of Locked on Hurricanes. Now on video, we send you to the Locked on Today 24/7 YouTube channel, and on audio, check out Locked on NHL for your second listen. If you want to keep up with me, I'm once you're Zach on X. The podcast is L_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, D Zachary Martin. We're going to click links here in my bio. You can find all my writing content at thehockeyraiders.com. If you want to find us on our podcast platforms, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you list your podcast. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. And on YouTube, it's Locked on Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification to miss the show, hit the thumbs up to me if you like the show as well. Share with other Caniacs who come every day or just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Wolves Wednesday edition of Locked on Hurricanes. Enjoy Wednesday. Until next time, as always, let's go Canes and Wolves.